Well, welcome inside. Another week has come and gone. More hockey actions happen in the playoffs, and obviously there's more Flames chatter to be had. Before we get into all of that, we'd like to thank everyone for the downloads and the feedback from last week's episode. Appreciate the new followers and new listens. Don't forget to tell your other fellow Flame fans about us. I am your host of the show, John Easthope, and of course, alongside me, as always, Robert Munich. Robert, how are we today?
Life is good. The Maple Leafs are out of the playoffs, which is great. And now it's just time for Mikko Rantanen to single-handedly take down the Edmonton Oilers.
Yes. Before we jump into the Flames action, what's your take on this Final Four? You Dallas, you got Edmonton, you got the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes, which I think could be a sneaky series. What do you make of this Final Four, and who's got your rooting interest here, Robert?
Oh, man. I mean, the way I see it is like these teams are just so tight. Like, I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot that separates them right now. So I think we're in for some pretty entertaining hockey. I kind of got this like sneaking suspicion that Carolina is going to make it through, like because they've been there for so many years. I think this might be the year they get through because Florida's a little banged up. You look at a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, he's not the same player right now. Even like a guy like Barkov hasn't been as dominant. So like I'm almost thinking Carolina might pull it off. And geez, with Edmonton, it's just their depth scoring has kind of kept them in it, and I could see that kind of drying up here a little bit. So I might go Carolina, Dallas. How are you feeling about it?
That's 100% what I tweeted out last night. I like this Carolina Hurricanes team, and people are like, well, yeah, this is the same old Canes. This isn't the same old Canes. If you go watch their games, people call them boring. I call them effective because what they do is very effective, and they shut down some really good hockey teams. Remember, when Washington was right there behind Winnipeg for the President's Trophy, they did not look anywhere close to being in that realm of a hockey team versus Carolina. I think Florida's right for the picking. We saw Toronto get up on them early. Toronto just doesn't have any finishing power, whereas I see the Hurricanes do. So I like them in that series. And I like the Mikko Rantanen storyline. So Mikko Rantanen versus his old team. That might be a very intriguing series. I just have questions about, and this is not the Flames, John, coming through here, but what is Edmonton's goaltending going to give them? And does their depth continue to hold up? And on the flip side of that is how hurt or isn't hurt is Draisaitl, and what can McDavid do for the Oilers here? But the way Dallas is playing, it's really hard to pick against them. I have the Hurricanes beating the Stars in the Stanley Cup final, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Dallas Stars take it all. Awesome. Looking forward to it as always for sure. Robert, we're going to head into the Flames chatter here. So to remind everyone from last week, or who hadn't paid attention or doesn't remember from last week, we started doing some letter grades for some Flames. So last week we did guys like Nazem Kadri and Sharon Govich, and really wanted to go through and talk about their play from the season, what our thoughts on their play from the season, give them a letter grade, and kind of where we see them heading in the future here. And let's kick it off here with Mackenzie Weegar. There's not a defensive stat that you look at that Mackenzie Weegar wasn't 1 or 2 in for the Flames this season, the way that he really took that defensive group on his back and really pushed from the back end for this Calgary Flames. What did you make of Mackenzie Weegar, what he brought to the lineup for the Flames, and where do you see him going here in the future for the Calgary?
Man, I mean, it's like when I was doing the prep for this pod, I was just going through kind of all aspects of his game, and I couldn't think of like one bad thing to say about it. Like yeah. I was thinking like, is there like any sort of like kind of sort of constructive feedback, or is there anything he could really improve on? And you could say maybe he could score a couple more goals, but like outside of that, I'm like, this guy was just simply outstanding this year. Like I thought he was so good. Yeah. He ends up putting up 47 points, which is tied for third on the Flames with Matt Coronado. He led the Flames in assists, and he led by 5 assists too. Like it wasn't like it was like he was tied or led the team by 39 and Kadri at 38. It was like he led by 5 assists. So there's a pretty sizable gap there. And you take a look at the points scoring in the league among defensemen. He was 16th, tied for 16th in the NHL in scoring amongst defensemen. And he's a plus 18 on the team with a minus 16 goal differential. Like that's fantastic. When he was on the ice, the Flames outscored their opposition 61-44. Like it was just crazy how good he was. I mean, there was a time in November where he blocked a shot with his foot. I think it was in Detroit, and for like the next couple of weeks he was a little off because I think he was playing through a pretty significant foot injury. Yeah. Outside of that, like couple weeks, like he was incredible. Like you said, he carried this defense on his back without Weegar, the Flames, they're literally in the bottom probably 5 of the NHL. Because you take a look at the other pairings, the Anderson pairing, they got caved in quite a bit. The third pairing was, mediocre at best. And Mackenzie Weegar ended up having to do all the heavy lifting. So, and, like he put up all these great numbers. You look at the shot metrics. He was top 3 in everything among Flames defensemen. And you consider that he was doing that while playing with Daniil Miramanov and Joel Hanley. Hanley, who started the season as the number 8 defenseman, and Miramanov, who was not an everyday NHL defenseman, and Weegar still put up all these incredible numbers, incredible stats. Like, it was just a really, really good season, and then you kind of take into consideration all the off ice aspects. He's clearly one of the major leaders on the team. He's awesome with the media. He's a fan favorite. Like, I have nothing but incredible things to say about Mackenzie Weegar in the season that he just had. And, if I were to give him a letter grade, it would definitely be like an A plus. Like, there's no doubt about it. I don't really know how you could argue anything else.
You mentioned it there, and that was one of the big things. Is all those accolades that you went through and the numbers that we've mentioned. He did it all with a revolving door beside him as a defensive pairing. Hanley became kind of a mainstay beside him the latter half of the season here, but it was a lot of Miramanovs and then another guy this game and then another guy that game. And then we need you, but he did a lot of heavy lifting for this group, and his numbers look tremendous. His defensive partners, they don't look as good as his without the way that Mackenzie Weegar plays. And he was allowed to play his game and do it his way a lot of these nights just by Ryan Huska having the trust in this guy to go out there and perform at the highest levels. And he just repaid this Flames team in spades. People are going to nitpick that he's not a power play guy, but yet he still was able to really run an effective power play for the Flames overall here. Getting himself 21 power play points is nothing to scoff at. And he wasn't taking a ton of penalties, only 33 penalty minutes on the year for Mackenzie Weegar is outstanding as well for a defenseman playing in all of those tough minutes versus all those top guys from other teams. This guy gets an A+ for me. It's not even close. It's not even a debate for me. And anyone who wants to argue that Mackenzie Weegar wasn't the Flames' best defenseman, I don't know what to tell you because we watched completely different seasons if you're not giving Mackenzie Weegar that honor. The other guy that came over in that trade from Florida with
let's just do like a quick little like future, like what we see for Weegar, because I don't think we touched on that. But the thing is, he's clearly like if I'm in charge of the Flames, this guy is a Flame for the rest of his career.
Captain?
Easily the next captain. Whenever Michael Backlund decides to move on or retire, whatever the case may be, he's obviously the next choice as captain. I don't really think there's even a conversation around that. And he's on a really good contract. He's got 6 more years left at $625. One of the better deals in hockey right now. Like, he's totally underpaid for what he brings to the table at this point in time. So I think the future is bright for him. I think he's a major part of this organization, a major part of this culture. Like, we always talk about not necessarily us, but like the media in Calgary. And there's just been so much discussion about the culture of this team, how incredible it is. And I think the difficult thing is going to be how they maintain it, especially when the likes of, Backlund and Coleman and some other guys end up moving on eventually, Rasmus Anderson. I think Mackenzie Weegar will be kind of one of the keepers of the culture, and he'll be one of the guys that continues to kind of enforce it with new players that come in here. So I think he's a major part of this team moving forward. He's a guy that would not even be considered on the trade block. Even if you are in a rebuild, I still think you keep the guy. I'm just, like I said, I'm a massive fan of the player, and I think the Flames are very lucky to have him.
And he's the guy that Ryan Huska is going to trust, I think, going forward as well, to anchor that locker room down, to be the go-between, to be the guy who can fill that captain's shoes. All due respect to Michael Backlund, but I think a lot of people already feel Mackenzie Weegar as the captain or in that type of role for the Flames, just showing his leadership. And I think that's going to continue going forward here. You're going to have a lot of young defensemen coming up here through the ranks shortly for the Flames, the Parex, the Muse maybe, Brustevich, and so on and so forth, Solovyov, all these guys coming through. You're going to need that veteran leader on the back end, and that for me is absolutely going to be Mackenzie Weegar here.
Yeah, and one last crazy stat.
Yeah,
Mackenzie Weegar this season, he was 7th in the NHL in time on ice. The only guys that played more than him this year were Zach Werenski, Cale Makar, Mo Seider, Travis Sanheim, Mike Matheson, and Brock Faber. That's it. He played 1,957 minutes this year.
Jeez.
Like that's crazy. Like, oh my god. And he, like you said, like he plays power play, penalty kill. He's playing, taking on the tougher matchups at 5-on-5. Like this guy is a stud. Like he is a legit top 15 defenseman in the NHL right now.
He's also the guy in that trade when people talk about how Florida fleeced the Flames in that trade because Kachuk's won a Stanley Cup now and he looks really good down there. I'm like, well, hold on. You obviously have clearly not watched any Mackenzie Weegar hockey in the last couple of seasons because that guy is worth the price of admission. I really like what Mackenzie Weegar brings to the Calgary Flames. What about Jonathan Huberdeau? He also came over in that trade. He's a guy who took a lot of heat for a couple of seasons in Calgary. And then a lot of people were caking on some love for how he changed his game this season. What do you make of Jonathan Huberdeau, his season, and the letter grade that you would put upon number 10?
Man, I'm conflicted on this one because there are some positive aspects. So like you take a look at it, and the first thing that comes to mind is the 28 goals, which was, I think it was second on the Flames in goals this year, only behind Nazem Kadri.
Yeah.
Really impressive. I really like the way that he changed his game in the sense that he shot the puck a lot more. He went to the net a lot more. Like he did a lot more things that allowed him to score goals and put himself in positions to score goals. Whereas in the first 2 years during his time in Calgary, I thought he was very much a perimeter player. So I really like that change in his game. I really like the fact that he ended up becoming a good penalty killer for the Flames. I thought that, he was willing to do things like block shots. I thought he was a little more physical this year. And, we're told that he was like a much better defensive player. I don't really know. Like, I'd love to hear from the coaches, like the examples of why he was a better defensive player. But, you just heard Ryan Huska rave about his defensive prowess this year. So I'll definitely trust his opinion on that. So, you like all those things. And the other thing on top of that, too, is, when you watch his first 2 years in Calgary, there were times where he was actually hurting the team more than he was helping them. Like there were times where, he would just be a turnover machine. He would never shoot the puck. He would always force passes. He tried to do the infamous, backwards spinorama between the legs pass that always ended up in a turnover. Almost like a Mitch Marner in the playoffs kind of thing.
Burn.
And like he was trending to be a guy that actually hurt the Calgary Flames more than helped. And I think this year, because of the changes he made to his game, I actually think he was a player that was relied upon and was an important cog. And even Ryan Huska talked about it, and Huberdeau, he was just on Missing Curfew. He talked about that too, how this was like the first year under Huska where Ryan actually really trusted Huberdeau to be on the ice because of the changes he made to his game. So, like that's great, and you're happy for the guy. It seemed like, he kind of refound the love and the passion for the game and looked like he was having more fun this year in Calgary. But at the same time, it's like, he still makes $10.5 million, and 62 points and 34 assists is just simply not really good enough, in my opinion. Like he is 92nd in the NHL in assists this year, tied for 92nd. And, you take a look at, say, from the 2018-19 season to the 21-22 season. So it's about, 4 or 5 years. Huberdeau was second in the NHL in assists. The only guy that had more assists was Connor McDavid during that time. And since joining Calgary, he's 69th in assists. So the thing I want to see more from Huberdeau is I just want to see those more dynamic plays. I want to see him setting up his teammates more. And, I got some pushback on Twitter when I put out kind of my thoughts on Huberdeau's season. Like a lot of people are saying that, like, he's not playing with good enough players. Like he needs to play with more finishers. The Flame system isn't conducive for his type of game. And I'm like, good players figure it out. Like you look at Florida, the year he had 115 points, he's playing with Duclair and Bennett. Like this year he's playing with Nazem Kadri. Kadri's a better offensive player than both those guys. Like I don't think it's a talent issue. Like I just think it's more of him needing to figure out how to become a better playmaker. So there's just kind of a long way in saying there were definitely some positives this year that I appreciated from his game, but there are also just the fact that, like, he is a $10.5 million player. I still expect more from him, especially in the playmaking department. Like 34 assists, I just don't think is good enough. That guy's got to be pushing at least 50 assists a year, in my opinion. So overall, I'd give him a B minus. Like I said, he's gone from a guy who's really hurt the team to a guy that's helping the team, but at the same time, it's still you're expecting a little bit more. So yeah, overall, a decent season for Huberdeau. I would give him a B minus.
It definitely was his best season in Calgary, but the bar was so low, right? It was so low when he had those first 2 years where he just wasn't being part of this team, wasn't providing what you need him to provide. And I think you still need more from him, honestly. I'm glad you went there, Robert. I appreciate the way he's changed his game. He's been able to add penalty killing to his resume. He's been able to be a more effective 200-foot player. I love and appreciate all of that because that's what I like in a hockey player. But at the same time, you're paid to produce, and 62 points isn't enough for me for the amount of money you're going to be getting here. Playing on the top line, getting the top power play minutes, and all of that. You got all of the benefit of the doubt from Ryan Huska with all of these minutes you're getting here, and even top power penalty killing minutes. He's getting a ton of those as well. I don't think it's out of the arena to ask him to be a point per game type of player, whether that's 60 assists or 55 assists or whatever it is. Get back to what makes you be successful. The talent is around him. That's just an excuse. That's an absolute excuse. What did Jerome McGinley play with over the course of his career in Calgary as centerman? These weren't elite centermen. All due respect to Conroy and Langkow, these weren't top line elite centermen. Jerome McGinley made it work. Now, Huberdeau's not Jerome McGinley, obviously, but the mentality should be there. You should be able to elevate your line mates. You should be able to elevate those around you and be able to produce some points here. So I appreciate Huberdeau's game, and I appreciate this is his best season in Calgary. And the best I can give him of a grade here is a B minus as well, because you need a little bit more from him. He needs to be a little bit more of a leader. He needs to give you a little bit more on the ice, and he needs to be that guy that can help teach these younger players here how to be a pro and to be effective in Calgary. And it starts with just making sure his game is on point. And you can't take shifts off. I love Huberdeau. I really, really do. Just stop taking some shifts off, continue to put in the work, and continue to get better here, because in the course of the future here, we talked about this last episode, there are wingers coming. There are people coming behind you trying to take these jobs and to push you along here. I don't think at his contract he's going to lose his job by any means, but less minutes, less power play minutes are on the line for this guy. Less opportunity to be there at the end of the game to help the Flames win a hockey game or tie a hockey game, whatever the situation might be able to handle here. So he's got to continue to progress his game, be that leader, and just watch out behind you, because there are guys coming for your job here. The big question on his future, though, Robert, that a lot of people are going to ask, is that contract still untradeable for you?
Oh, 100% it is. Yeah, there's no GM in the league in his right mind that would take on that contract without the Flames eating a bunch of salary and taking on a bad deal as part of it. I think that's the only way you could possibly move off of it. So Jonathan Huberdeau, he's a Calgary Flame probably for the rest of his career. You know, they can't buy out the deal. They can't trade the deal. So he's going to be part of this organization for the next 6 seasons. I believe he has a full no move clause for the whole deal. Mm-hmm. So, you know, yeah, he's part of the team. And, you know, if he can kind of build off this season, and if he can just add a little bit more point production to the 200-foot game that he brought to the table this year, he can be an effective player. But at the same time, it's just like you got to just get a little more offense out of him. Like, you know, you take a look at his first 2 years in Calgary, he had 40 assists in each of those years. And this year he only had 34. So he actually had a six assist drop off. The big gain was in goals. And in my opinion, just based off the shooting percentage, and, you know, he had goals go off his shoulder, he had goals go off his skate. Like, that's not going to happen every year. And the shooting percentage isn't going to be hovering around 20% every year for Huberdeau. So I foresee him next season taking a step back in the goal scoring department. What you need more of is more of the assists, more of the playmaking. And like I said, push 45, push 50 assists. Like that's what the Calgary Flames need. They need a dynamic playmaker on this team, because, you know, they have a lot of good players, but they don't have anyone really with that dynamic playmaking ability that makes guys around him better, like you were saying. And that was a great point by you. He has to make people better around him. And, you know, he did that in Florida. I don't understand why it's not happening in Calgary. I don't get it. But he's a part of this team, and hopefully he can kind of continue to build on what he put out there this year.
You can only use the system Huska plays as an excuse for so long. But gotta remember, this is a guy who got Anthony Duclair paid at $4.5 million over 4 years on the island. So he can do it. He can elevate guys. He can get guys paid. We just like to see a little bit more from him. The next guy is a guy that doesn't cheat you on effort. He's one of my favorites on this team. And I just love the way that he plays, but I really wonder if he's actually going to be here next year in Calgary because of the demand that this player could bring to the open market. What do you make of Blake Coleman, what he provided to the Flames this season, and where do you think it's going to go with him?
Well, actually, because I know you're such a big Coleman guy, let's hear you go first. Like I want to hear your thoughts on Coleman here.
Sure. This guy is Mr. Everything for the Flames, right? This guy, penalty kill, second power play. He's out there against the toughest guys. He plays alongside Michael Backlund. This is a guy who elevates guys around him. Younger players rave. We heard Matt Cornell talk about how much he loves playing with Blake Coleman on the same line when he was there. He's not the only youngster to say those kind of things. Blake does not cheat you on effort. He provides everything that you want in a 200-foot player, and he does so 39 points in 82 games for a guy who plays those type of hard minutes. 15 goals. It's a step down from his 30 goal. He was never going to touch 30 goals again, though. A guy who's playing 17 and a half minutes a night. He gets a minute and a half power play. 4 power play goals is nothing to scoff at. This guy goes to the net hard. He plays hard, and he's very sound defensively. I love this player. I love what he brings to the lineup. He's only a -2 on the season, too, so a lot of players you see in that high penalty kill area, a guy who's counted on to shut down other teams' top lines, they tend to have a much worse plus-minus to their game when they're not a big goal scorer. And so Blake Coleman really is a guy who plays on the edge, and it does a really good, effective job with what he's given here. That's the reason why I pose the question, is he with the Flames next year? You have all of these teams who are like the Toronto Maple Leafs just got out of the playoffs. The Colorado Avalanche are out of the playoffs. Teams that had Stanley Cup aspirations might be looking at this type of a player to help bolster their lineup. And I just really wonder if he's a guy the Flames will go down that road and do the trade talking with. I give Blake Coleman a grade for what he is supposed to bring to the Flames and what he does provide to the Flames. Where are you at with Blake Coleman?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you just said is where I'm at. Like, I am such a fan of not only the player, but just the person in good Blake human. Coleman. Like, just such a good guy. He's one of those people that you want to have on your team all the time. Like, you want young players looking up to him. You want him to be a role model. Even vets too. Like, you want your vets to look at a guy like Blake Coleman and go like, okay, like I should be doing what he does, whether it's prepping for, the beginning of the season in training camp, whether it's how he works his ass off every single shift, or off the ice too. Like, just the way he treats people, the way he treats the media, the way he treats his teammates. Like, this is the type of person that you want to build your team around. So that's why, like, I have a really hard time with the idea of moving on from him. Like, I think this is a player that you want to keep around for at least another season, because he's got 2 more years left on his contract. Because, like, he brings everything to the table you could possibly want.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like you said, great 200-foot player. Like he's not the most talented guy in the world. I would argue in terms of actual NHL skills, he is like kind of right in the middle, if not below average. But because he works so damn hard and he's so smart and he does everything right, he's able to be like a, anywhere from a 40 to 50 point guy, and a guy that's hovering around 20 goals every single year.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I take a look back on his season, like there was about a 2 or 3 week period there where he was split up from Michael Backlund, where I thought he really struggled. Like, I think it was like over like a 9 or 10 game span. Like, he didn't have a point away from Backlund, but then they put him back together, and once again, they were dynamite. Like, I pulled up the stats for Coleman and Backlund together this season. So they played just shy of 800 minutes at 5-on-5.
It's ridiculous.
And keep in mind, like, they're playing against the best players in the National Hockey League every single night. And all of their shot metrics are above 50%. Like, the scoring chance percentage was 55% in their favor. They outscored their opposition 31-24 at 5-on-5. Like, I think Coleman is such an important member of this team. And without Coleman and without Backlund, who's going to take on those matchups? Like, there you talk about the idea of exploring a trade, and from an asset management standpoint, it totally makes sense. I totally get it. But at the same time, like guys like Coleman and Backlund, they're your only like true, legitimately, like high end defensive forwards. And if those guys aren't here, who are the next guys to step up and take on those matchups? Mm-hmm. I'm scared to know the answer to that question, because outside Backlund and Coleman, there's not very many, good defensive forwards on this team right now. So I'm with you. I'd give him a B plus, just because the offense wasn't quite there. Like, you kind of expect him to be at the 20 goal mark and be at least a half a point per game player, but I would say, he was slightly above average this year when you take in everything into consideration. So yeah, I'd give him a B plus, and I am just such a fan of this guy. I think he's incredible, and you are right. Like, if Craig Conroy were to dangle him on the trade market, there would be dozens of teams that would be interested in this guy. Like you said, like a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, they desperately need a guy like Blake Coleman. You wonder what you could get for somebody like that, but at the same time, like I don't think you want to move off him right now.
See, I personally wouldn't move him. I just raved about him for 2 minutes. Like, I love this guy. I love what he brings here, but he's such an intriguing piece that if the team comes calling and just gives you an offer that, like, it's really hard to turn down. Like, what if Dallas comes to you? Dallas is still in it. If this is a bad example. What if Dallas comes to you and says, "We'll give you Maverick Bork and a first-round draft pick for Blake Coleman straight up"? Like, those are deals you have to look at, deals that you have to put on your book and just take a look at. So he's a very intriguing piece here. He's one that I would love, much like Mackenzie Weegar. He's a guy that I would love to have my young players learn from: how to be a pro, how to be in Calgary, how to be a member of the Flames, what it means to the community to be a Calgary Flame. He's that type of guy for you. And then, of course, on the ice, he's just going to show you everything you need to be and lead by example. It's incredible what Blake Coleman can do from the Calgary Flames here.
Yeah, and like just to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, go ahead.
I get the whole they should explore a trade thing, because you take a look at it. He's 34 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. So, and he's coming off another good season, like a very solid season. So, and like you said, with all like the leadership intangibles, like there would be a pretty strong market for this guy, and it would be cup contenders going after him too. And I believe he's got some sort of no trade protection. So if you had to get him to waive, I could see, him waiving to go to a cup contender. And from an asset management standpoint, it totally makes sense. But at the same time, like you said, like you want those types of guys to lead young players in the right direction. And you want guys like Blake Coleman to continue to set the culture and maintain the culture and implement it with new guys coming in. Like, that's super important at the same time. So I think Craig Conroy's got a really tough decision to make with Coleman between now and next season. Do you hold on to him and hope to maybe sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal when his contract expires, or do you look to cash in on him? It's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out. Because I would not want to be making that decision, because I'm such a fan of this guy.
I will say, whoever makes that decision, how they make that decision, you can understand both sides of the conversation and the decision that they come to at the end of the day with Blake Coleman. Incredible player. Next, we're going to talk about a guy who had a career high in games played, a career high tied in goals, a career high in assists, and a career high in points. Joe Hanley got a lot of runway with the Calgary Flames, more than he's ever seen before. He also played a career high average of 18 and a half minutes a night for the Calgary Flames. Ryan Huska did not hesitate to dress 44 and put him out there. He played a lot with Mackenzie Weegar. So for me, giving this guy a letter grade is going to be interesting to see how you approach the Joe Hanley conversation and the letter grade that you give him, Robert.
It might have been the most unexpected season of any Calgary Flame that I can remember.
Yeah, good call.
Like off the top of your head, has there ever been a guy that's come into a season with such low expectations to shatter through them? Can you think of another guy in like this kind of situation?
That's a good question. Maybe a Josh Juris or a Colburn.
But even that's like different because with Hanley, he's an older guy, like he's in his mid 30s, whereas those guys were young guys, kind of come up and comers.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember a 30, I think what Hanley's like 33 or 34. I can't remember a guy that age coming to Calgary and succeeding like Hanley did.
Yeah, good call.
Like really, really impressive year. Because like I remember at the beginning of the season, I was adamant that Hanley should have been on waivers. That he should have gone to the Wranglers and they should have kept Jacob Pelche on the opening night roster. And I still stand by that opinion. But man, like, did Hanley ever come in here and play well? Like, the crazy thing about his season was from the beginning of the season, so like October 13th to December 13th, he only played in 6 games. Like, that's it. And then you take a look from December 14th to the end of the season, he only missed 4 games. And one of those games was game 82 in LA to make room for, guys like Parekh and Brustevich. So he only missed 3 games between December 14th and the end of the year. And, that kind of says it all right there. He became one of those players that you couldn't take out of the lineup. He became too valuable. Like, and, there's lots of talk about how Mackenzie Weegar elevated Joel Hanley's play. And that's obviously right to a certain extent. But I also think Hanley played a big part in Mackenzie Weegar having such a great season too. Because the main thing for me was that it allowed Weegar to play on the right side, where I think he's a much better defenseman compared to the left side. And like Hanley was just a really good fit for him because he's very smart. He's good defensively. Like, he's just rock solid. He doesn't take too many risks or too many chances. He's always making safe plays. And I think that allowed Mackenzie Weegar to be a little bit more offensive, take a little more risks, and kind of join the play, join the rush, make some more pinches, because he always knew that Hanley was going to be right there to back him up. So I thought they made a really good pair together. You take a look at some of the stats, like you mentioned, he played a career high in games played, career high in points. He was second on the Flames in plus minus. I think he was a plus 12. So, and then off the ice, people just have nothing but incredible things to say about Hanley, the person. Like I heard nothing but just like remarkable things about the guy. And same thing in Dallas too. Like I read that a lot of the star players were like pretty upset when they lost Hanley on waivers, just because he is such a good guy. So, and I think that stuff is important. So, for me, giving out a letter grade, I think it has to be an A. When you compare what the expectations were to the output from this season, it has to be an A. It could even be higher than that, because he went from being the number 8 defenseman on the Flames to being a critical piece of the top 4, playing on a pair with Mackenzie Weegar, playing the toughest matchups. Like, that's crazy. I would have never expected that from Hanley. So good on the guy. I thought he had a really good year.
We talked about Bahal last year, and we're talking about last week. We talked about Hanley this week. That's 2 waiver claims the Flames have brought in here that have really, taken the opportunity and run with it. The biggest thing for Hanley for me was when he settled in the second half of this season, he allowed Mackenzie Weegar to settle down a little bit and to be Mackenzie Weegar even more so in the second half of the season for the Flames. And that was a big reason the Flames were just about made the playoffs. He was a big part of that reason. You said it there. You couldn't take this guy out of the lineup because you had no one behind him that would be able to provide what Joe Hanley was providing for the Calgary Flames. This guy's a great teammate. We heard that you mentioned the Dallas Crew. The Flames guys all say it, how much they dig playing with this guy, how much of a great guy he is in the locker room. And he really added to that whole culture talk about how the Flames have this new culture. And he's a big part of that and a big reason for that. And I think that's why there's big conversations around do the Flames re-sign Hanley and bring him back next year. I'm glad you gave him an A grade, so I don't feel so crazy for also giving him an A grade, because like you mentioned, expectations versus what you got, he blew this out of the water. I expected Hanley to be that 7-8 guy, play a half a dozen to a dozen games for the Flames when they needed it, and providing injury insurance in case somebody else went down. That's what I thought Hanley was going to be for the Flames. Not a top 4 minute-eating defenseman who gives them only 21 penalty minutes, kills penalties, blocks a ton of shots, and is a plus 12 on the season. Incredible season from Hanley from when he got into the lineup in the second half of this season here. So he's undeniable for the Flames this year, and he's the type of defenseman that I hope the Flames try to find and duplicate for Mackenzie Weegar next year. All due respect to Hanley being 33 and being at that age, I think I look elsewhere rather than bringing him back next season. I wonder where you sit on that conversation as well, Robert. Do you bring Hanley back? Do you look at maybe a 1-year contract for Joel? Hey, thanks for what you did last year. Let's repay him, bring him back again, see what he can do with Mackenzie Weegar?
This is a tough one. I think the way I would view it is what's like your overall plan with your defense next year? And if I'm in charge, I make the decision that Jake Bean is not a regular and Daniil Miramanov is not a regular. So they're both signed into next season. So I think you try to either trade them, whether it's for future considerations or a minor league defenseman on another team, or you bury them in the minors next season, or you look to buy them out. That opens up 2 spots on the main roster for defensemen. And if that does happen, if that is the plan, I would definitely look to bring Joel Hanley back, because he's proved that he could play with Mackenzie Weegar. They had a really nice connection and good pairing, like we just discussed. But I'm also thinking, could Joel Hanley be a good pair, a good defense pair for Zane Parekh? Hanley on the left, Parekh on the right. They play third pair minutes. And kind of like I just said with Weegar, like, because Hanley's so smart and he's so good defensively and he's not a risk taker, maybe that could allow Zane to step up and be the offensive driver that he needs to be, and have that defensive support from a guy like Hanley. And then also Hanley could just be a really good mentor for a guy like Zane Parekh, because like I said, like the character sounds like it's off the charts with this guy. So I would certainly seriously look to bring back Joel Hanley, and I would do that by making roster spots by getting rid of Jake Bean and Daniil Miramanov. So I would look to sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal. I have no problem with that.
I didn't think of it that way. I didn't think about Hanley with Zane Parekh. I didn't think of it that way. That directly affects the next guy on our list, and you've already mentioned him in Jake Bean here, but I think Hanley with Parekh might be a sneaky good thing for both Hanley, keeping him alive in these hockey games, and for Parekh to allow Parekh to play his game. Very interesting idea from you, Robert, there. I like it on a short-term 1 or 2 year contract. I don't hate that idea. That would mean you have to do something with Jake Bean. So let's talk about Jake Bean. Let's talk about his season. Let's talk about what he provides, because I don't see him in that role alongside Zane Parekh on a third pair. Well, good anyways. What did you make of Jake Bean this season? I wonder if you're as disappointed in what you saw from Bean as I was. I'm giving him a letter grade of a C- because I just wasn't impressed overall with what Jake brought to the lineup. I expected a lot more. I expected his skating to be a lot better than it was. I expected his puck movement to be a lot better than it was. And frankly, he's kind of struggled down the stretch here. I know he got a lot of games. He played 64 for the Flames this year, and he was trusted in a lot of situations, but I just didn't think he ever elevated his game enough this year for me. And I wonder if the Flames had an upgrade on that third pair, if that would have been enough to help push that team over the edge into the playoffs. Not saying Jake Bean was the reason they didn't make the playoffs, but I wonder how much that would have helped the Flames down the stretch here. Where do you see Jake Bean and his season, Robert, yourself?
This is good, because I think you and I have different opinions on this one. Because, just to start off with a letter grade, I just gave him a B, because heading into the season, I think my expectations for him were, pretty low for the most part. A team like the Hurricanes or the Blue Jackets, they don't give up on former first round picks, whatever he was, a 15th overall pick or whatever it was. You don't give up on those guys at the age Jake Bean was, if he's not stepping up and performing. So when the Flames signed Bean, I thought he was just going to be, a solid third pair defenseman. I didn't really have too much expectations for him. Like, I thought he'd be kind of like a number 5 or number 6, and that's kind of exactly what he was all year. And like he's like a fine filler. Like, he's a fine, like, kind of stopgap guy. Like, I see Bean, playing on teams that are kind of in transition, and he just kind of fills a role for them.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Flames look to take that next step, I do not see Jake Bean as part of the organization. The thing with Bean for me is that I just don't know what he does well. Like, last week we talked about it with Sharon Govich, how there wasn't any aspect of the game where he was really making an impact. And I thought the same thing with Jake Bean this year. Like, he's not like a massive shot blocker. He's not like the greatest defensive player. He's not the greatest offensive player. He's kind of an average puck mover. He's an average skater. He's not overly physical. He's not, overly, he doesn't provide like that leadership. He's not overly vocal. Like, everything with Jake Bean is just kind of like vanilla. It's kind of meh, a little below average. And I think he seems like a nice person. It seems like he kind of fit into the locker room well, which is great. But at the same time, I think it's time to move on from him. I think Bean is the type of player who blocks a spot for say Yan Kuznetsov to come up and earn a role in the Calgary Flames. I think Bean blocks a spot for a guy like that. So it was a fine signing. He was kind of an Oliver Shillington replacement, and he was fine in that regard. But I would be open to moving on from him, whether, like I said, it's a trade, or you put him on waivers, or you buy him out. I would not have him back with the Flames next year. I thought it was a pretty average season, and it's kind of what I expected from him coming into the year.
At 25, 26 years old, a lot of defensemen hit their stride in the National Hockey League. A lot of guys figure things out. And I really thought that we would see that from Jake Bean, because I saw the tools. Obviously, in junior, you see the tools. That's why he's a first-round draft pick. It's what Carolina saw at him when they picked him at 13th overall. That's what they saw and tried to develop out of him in the National Hockey League level. I just thought he would be able to put it together. And so maybe my expectations were unfair to Jake Bean, but he replaced Shillington, a guy who's going to play top 4 minutes. And you thought that this guy could come in here and maybe he could find a role alongside Weegar or Anderson and be a top 4 guy who can help elevate the lineup a little bit. And you just didn't see any growth in his game whatsoever. And that's concerning for me. And that's a reason why I would move on from this guy. And all due respect to the guy himself, he's probably a great human being. He loves Calgary. He clearly signed here for a reason. But hockey-wise, just you have other guys, and you mentioned Solovyov there. Kuznetsov is coming. What about Etienne Morin, the guy who could surprise at camp for the Flames? There are guys coming here who would be better served in that role. That's better serve the long-term outlook of this Calgary Flames team by playing a third-pair role. It's a little disappointing that that's what we got from Jake Bean. If I'm going to be honest, at the end of the day, he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes your 7/8 defenseman on your roster, just to be that fill-in guy or that injury assurance guy down the road for the Flames. Not much more to really say about Jake Bean here, about his future at Calgary, but it really, if he's going to be back with the Flames next year, he needs to find himself a role, and he needs to find a way to elevate himself in that role each and every game and just find some consistency to his game here. Because frankly, for me, it was disappointing from Jake Bean. Last guy to talk about on the show today, and I purposely left him till last because this could be a polarizing conversation about what to do with this player in the future. But let's talk about his season first. This is the captain, number 11, long-term Calgary Flame. Everyone loves Michael Backlund. Everyone has positive things to say about Michael Backlund. Everyone loves the way he can play when he's on his game. What did you make of the captain this year, and your letter grade for number 11?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like a typical Michael Backlund season. He puts up, around 30, for an 82 game pace, he's at like about 35 points this year. So kind of puts up that 35 to 40 points, scores 15 goals, takes on the hardest matchups, wins those matchups at 5-on-5. You take a look at when he's on the ice, the Flames outscore their opposition 35-29 at 5-on-5. Like he was Michael Backlund. I think that's kind of the best way I can describe it. He's been so consistent for about the last 10 years here, just taking on those tough matchups, putting up a little bit of offense, taking a million faceoffs for this team, especially in the defensive zone, being first over the boards on the penalty kill. He does so many important things for this team that go, I would say, underappreciated. I don't know if the majority of the fan base really appreciates what this guy does. Because, kind of similar with Blake Coleman, if you take away Michael Backlund from this team, which center is going to take on those hard defensive matchups? Like Kadri is not a very good defensive player, and that's fine because his job is to put up points, and he definitely cheats towards the offensive side of the puck. Connor Zary has barely played center. Sharon Govich is not a center; he's a mess down the middle. Morgan Frost, he's not a very good defensive player. Like he's a smart player, but I really question the effort level and like the compete and the battle effort. Whereas with Michael Backlund, you never question that. Like he's always there. He's always giving 100%. So, in my opinion, I thought he had a good year. The letter grade I would give him is a B. I think it was kind of right what you expect from Michael Backlund. And there were times this year, like especially around the Four Nations break, where he was not playing good hockey. He was actually playing some of the worst hockey I've ever seen him play. But then you get to the end of the season and you hear what he was dealing with. He was playing through a back injury, a rib injury, and an oblique injury. Like this guy his body just completely got destroyed this year. It almost broke down. So the fact that he was playing through all that and still taking on all those defensive matchups and winning all those faceoffs and playing on the penalty kill, when you take all that into consideration, I think it was another really good year for Michael Backlund. And I think he's an important part of this team. I really do. I know there are a lot of people kind of criticizing him this year. And there were times this year when I was, because I didn't really understand the extent to what he was playing through. But, you just take a look at everything as a whole, and man, he was really good again. And there's the off ice aspect too. I mean, he's the captain, and you can tell like through watching the chase and listening to player interviews and coaching interviews, like this guy is very respected by his teammates, by the organization. Him and his wife do probably the most charity work of any player on this team. Mm-hmm. I think that stuff all matters. I really do. So I'm a big fan of Backlund. I hope he comes back. And I would give him a B. I thought he was like right where he needed to be this season.
I love how you put that at the beginning there. A typical Michael Backlund season, and that's what it was. It really what it was. That's how the perfect way to sum it up. This guy takes a lot of heat for how he captains this team. People are like, I see it on social media all the time. They're upset that he's not this rah-rah guy on the bench yelling at guys. That's not how he leads. He leads by example, by all the things you just listed there, the off-ice stuff, the charity stuff, the how to conduct yourself in the room with the coaches, with the media. This guy is a pro. This guy is exactly what you need him to be when you need him to be. And he does it every game without complaint and without second guessing. He says, okay, coach, what do you need from me? Penalty kill? On it. What do you need here? Oh, you need me to go shut down McDavid? I'm on it. And that's what this guy does. He goes out there and he leads and he produces his 30-ish points that he likes to get every year. And we appreciate those points from Michael Backlund, but he's exactly what you need him to be. And I like your point of who's going to play that role if Michael Backlund's out in the lineup. We saw it very briefly for a few games. The few games that Michael Backlund missed this year, the Flames forward group was a little bit of a mess. Let's be honest there. Sharon Govich is not a center. Please stop playing him at center. Connor Zary, still an unknown at center, like you mentioned. What's Morgan Frost long-term at center? Like we have all these other guys here, but no one fills that role. And that's what you need. That's what you need from your captain. That's what you need from your leader. That's what you need from a guy. And he's doing this at the age of 36. There are a lot of players that play this game that drop off before they hit the age of 36. So Michael Backlund, he's going to get a B for me as well. There was that lull that you mentioned where it wasn't exactly up to par, where he wasn't exactly Michael Backlund. But overall, he played a really good year and did really a lot of good for the Flames organization as well.
Hey, okay. I just want to ask. So you mentioned like the leadership aspect there. Like he's not like the rah guy. Do you see that as a problem?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There have been many captains in this league that lead by example, that don't go out there and yell. Austin Matthews doesn't go out there and yell. He leads Toronto by just playing his game. You go out there. Jerome McGinley was a rah guy, and he did a really good job. Mark Giordano, he wasn't exactly the most rah guy. He led by example. It's not a bad thing. People like to make it a bad thing because when you're watching a game and you don't see him getting all of his guys, people think it sends the wrong message. That's not how it is with Michael Backlund. He says, okay, hop on my back. I'm going to show you how we need to get it done. There's other guys on that bench that are going to yell at you. Nazem Kadri will tell you where to go in a hurry if you let him. Blake Coleman will tell you where to go in a hurry if you let him. There are guys to do that for, and I think that speaks to the leadership group as a whole. Michael Backlund knows his role as captain, and his assistants, they know their role as well to help back up their captain.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, there's different ways to lead. And I think one of the reasons why he catches so much heat for that from a portion of the fan base and media is because we did have Jerome McGinley here.
Yeah.
And, Jerome was the captain in Calgary for 10 years. And, oh my God, I mean, that guy was like the definition of like a macho leader, like a guy that will go out there, hit, fight, get in his teammates' faces to get them going.
Yep.
Score big goals, make big plays. Like, we were spoiled rotten in this city to have a guy like Jerome McGinley as captain.
100%.
So I think it's almost like the bar has been set by him as to what a captain of the Calgary Flames should be. And Backlund's just not that guy. He's just a completely different person and a completely different player, but he can still be effective in that role. And like you said, like, they have other leaders here. Like Mackenzie Weegar is a very vocal guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he can take on like a lot of like the media stuff. And Kadri's a really vocal guy. Like you said, Coleman, Anderson, there's lots of guys in that room, Ryan Lomberg, lots of guys in that room that can fire up the team and do things like, if they need to fight, they'll fight. Or if they need to make a big speech, they'll make a big speech. But like, just the way Backlund goes about his business, I think is impressive. Like, every year he's first in fitness testing results, which I think that says a lot, which is how he prepares in the offseason, the way he treats people, the way he works in the community, the way like on the ice, he may not hit or throw big hits, but like his commitment to playing like a hard-nosed game and shutting down opponents' best players, I think is something that his teammates can look up to. So yeah, dude, I'm right there with you. Like, I think Backlund is a good captain. Do I think he's the best captain in the league? No, I don't. But at the same time, I think he's really good for this team. He's a great spokesperson for this community. Does a lot of great work in the community. He's good with the fans, good with the media. Like, there's a lot of good stuff that Michael Backlund brings to the table. And when the day comes when Backlund's gone, I do think that people will. It'll almost be like one of those things, like you don't know what you have until it's gone. And I think eventually people will realize, like, okay, we had a really good person and we also had a really good player in Michael Backlund, and we certainly miss that. I could totally see that happening when the day comes when he's not with the team anymore.
As you were talking there, I was reminded of a story that I heard on the Fan 960. I don't remember which Avalanche player they were interviewing from back in the day, but they talked about Joe Sakic leading that group, and someone asked them about Joe Sakic on the bench, and they're like, Joe didn't talk on the bench. Joe didn't talk in the room. Joe went out there and played the game, and if you didn't play to the standard, you knew that you weren't playing it because you weren't being as hard-nosed as your captain. You weren't doing what the captain needed you to do for him to be successful, and that's how he let you know that you weren't being on what his role was. It wasn't this rah-rah guy in the dressing room leading him to Stanley Cups. It was a guy who was going out there and leading by example, showing the other players what he's willing to do to win a Stanley Cup. And I think that's the same ilk Michael Backlund is made of. Just a guy who out there leads by example. And your point of you're really going to miss Michael Backlund when he's gone, I really, really think the Flames will miss when Michael Backlund is gone, which brings us to the conversation. What do you do with Michael Backlund? Do you bring him back on a one-year deal next year like he is signed for? Do you move on from Michael Backlund? Do you sign him to an extension? Where are you at with the future of Michael Backlund?
We had this discussion, I want to say it was like 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, you know what? Like, I'd be okay if they moved him. I'd be okay if they kept him. I would understand both ideas, but the more I think about it and the more I kind of talk about it, the more I'd like to see Backlund stick around. And I like to see him stick around for, not only for the remainder of his contract, but maybe even a year or two after that. I just think like this guy, he's a Calgary Flame through and through. He brings so much to the table, like I said, both on the ice and off the ice. He's the type of guy that, once again, you want your dressing room. You want him carrying on that culture and setting a standard. Like, He's great for that. So, and if he can be slotted properly, I do think like if he can be a third line center for the next year or two, and then maybe transition to being more of like a fourth line center and like a pure shutdown guy, I still think he brings a lot of value to the team on the ice. And like I said, I just don't know who that next defensive center is going to be. I think the Flames are really going to struggle if they don't have a guy like Backlund. So, over the last couple months here, I'd say my tune has changed to the idea that Backlund should come back and he should be a Flame for his whole career. And I would understand if he asked for a trade to try to go and win a Stanley Cup somewhere. I would totally get that. But, if I were the Flames, I think I would try to keep this guy for as long as possible. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it right now.
Michael should be a Flame as long as he wants to be a Flame. That's where I come down on it. I think there are ways to have Michael Backlund in your lineup and to be effective over the next few years till he retires. You lessen his role 5-on-5 a little bit. Maybe take a little bit of the penalty killing away from him as each season goes along here and try to find that next guy, which good luck, Flames, to take over some of that responsibility for him. This guy is a perfect center for this team. We wish raved for 5 minutes about what we thought of Michael Backlund, and I'm with you here. If he comes back next year, just keep bringing him back on 1-year contracts. There's nothing wrong with that. This guy has earned a lot of respect for me over the course of his career. This guy has earned a lot of cachet with the Flames organization, and I think he deserves that kind of respect as well. You can still move ahead with a retool, a rebuild, a restructure, however you want to word it, while having Michael Backlund in the fold. This is the kind of guy that you can transition into a player development role or a coach down the line as well within your organization. But for right now, let him play. Let him be the guy he is. Alongside Blake Coleman, those two will make anybody look really, really good. And that's a perfect spot for some of these young kids coming up in this Flames organization. Who better to learn from than Michael Backlund? He did it with a ton of Flame players we could list over the course of his career, helping these kids gain their footing in the National Hockey League and being able to push forward and be more successful NHLers. So I think Michael Backlund should be back. I think he should be back as long as he wants to be back. And if he wants to go chase the cup, then I think the Flames owe it to him to give him that opportunity to go chase the Stanley Cup, if that's what he wishes here. And he loves Calgary, right? It's one of those things that when you're that big in the community as well as the team itself, he'll be missed out in the community if he ever moves on as well, not just on the ice as well. A lot of charity organizations would be heartbroken if Michael Backlund did leave Calgary as well.
Oh, for sure. And like another thing I've just been kind of thinking of, like, so I lived in Vancouver for a while. I run the Canucks Army social media, so like I'm pretty dialed in on all things Canucks. And their 2011 Cup team. You hear a lot of the former Canuck players talk about that group. Like Kevin Bieksa talks about it a lot. How they had built like a fantastic culture in Vancouver, and it was doing things the right way. It was working your ass off the ice, on the ice, doing all the right things, practice habits, like everything. Like they had established everything to probably like a top tier. They were a top tier organization there for a while, between the Sedins and Luongo and Bieksa. That whole group of guys, Burrows, Kessler, like they had a really good culture there. And all of a sudden, like, it got stripped away pretty quickly. And, I think it was by like the 2017, 2018 season, there were no players from the 2011 team on the Canucks anymore. The Sedins had just retired and Bieksa had been traded. Kessler was gone. That whole group was gone. And there was no one really there to like pass on the torch, pass on the culture that they had built there that was so successful. The Sedins tried with Bo Horvat, but it was one guy. So the reason I bring this up is that I do think it's important that the Flames, they do have like a group of veteran players continually on this team that can push the culture and set the culture and maintain it. And, having a guy like Michael Backlund, who, like I said, is always first in fitness testing and does all the right things on the ice. I think you need a group of like 4, 5, 6 of those guys at all times to tell new players that come into the team or young players that come into the team that this is how we do things in Calgary. you know, like, and I was just listening to 32 Thoughts today, and they had a really good story about Nate Schmidt going to the Panthers, and it was like a preseason game, and Schmidt tried to make a play in like a fancy play in the neutral zone, and he turned the puck over, and he gets back to the bench, and Alex Barkov and Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, he said it was one of those players, went up to and said, "We don't do that shit in Florida. Like, get it together." And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that's what the Flames need. And they kind of have that right now with some of the veteran players that they have in this organization. And I do think it's important that they keep a group of those guys together so that they can do that kind of stuff. You know, say like Morgan Frost, he's not doing things the Flames way. Blake Coleman pulls him aside and screams at him and says, "Get your shit together. You're a Calgary Flame now. This is how we do, you know, this is how we do our business." You know, they signed a free agent this summer, and he's not playing up to the level or the caliber that's expected. Michael Backlund can pull him aside and say, "Hey, this is how we do it in Calgary. You pull that crap again, you're done." You know, like, that's the kind of stuff this team needs. So you can't just trade every single veteran. So that's why I'm kind of like on the fence of, you know, like, I think they should keep a Michael Backlund. They should keep a Blake Coleman. Like, you still need those types of players during this process here.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Like, when people were making fun of Huska and Conroy last year for this core six they kept talking about, like, there's good reasons they're talking about these guys. They're not all guys that are going to stay here long term, but there are guys that you need in your dressing room and on the ice to be those leaders, to lead by example and to show what it means to be a Calgary Flame. Really good point by you there. Really good story by Friedman on 32 Thoughts as well. And Michael Backlund is exactly that for the Flames. Exactly that. So is Blake Coleman. So is Mackenzie Weegar. And to continue that culture, because you don't want this culture to fall off. Once you've established what the Flames said this year, like, they all almost to a man talked about how great the culture was in that group at the end of the season press conferences. You want that to roll over. You want that to keep going. And that's how you build a successful organization. It starts off the ice in that room, and the Flames seem to have it right now. So keep it going with those veterans. I think Michael Backlund is a good leader, and people need to stop crapping on him on social media, because he does a lot more than you see just on the ice when it comes to being a leader of the Calgary Flames. Robert, anything else from you on these guys we talked about today or their future? If not, where can the folks find you, and what's coming up next from you on Flames Nation?
No, I mean, I think we covered it all. Great conversations about all these players. This is a lot of fun. I love doing this kind of stuff. So
yeah, me too.
Hopefully everybody listening likes it too. If you don't, hit us up, give us some feedback. We're always open to some feedback. And then just at Flames Nation, we're doing some report cards right now. So I got a Blake Coleman article coming out soon. I'll do a Kadri one, a Lomberg one. So we'll have some report card style articles coming out here over the next week or two. And find me at Ring of Fire CGY on Twitter.
And I am Vintage Johnny 84 across your social media platforms. Of course, the show is Red Mile Rundown on those same social media platforms. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher. We will see you guys next week on the show. Enjoy the playoffs as the conference finals get going. We'll chat next week.